I'm Leslie Wilson Jenkins, and I am married to Jim Jenkins. And right now, I'm doing a lot of consulting work in the areas of behavioral health. I work with women around issues of barrenness, as well as empowering them on how to be successful single women in their careers and in their lives. So I grew up in Fairfield County in a little town called Shelton, South Carolina, which interestingly enough is my family name. And so it's rural South Carolina. We were in the middle of four other little small towns, Newberry and Union and Winsboro and Chester. So we were like the pines and the ponds and the pastures in those among those other little small towns. So I did have a very big family, not just my immediate family, but my extended family. There were 8 of us growing up, and for the most of my life. And then my parents surprised us at my senior year in high school, and we had another little sister, and so there were 9 of us. And our home was full of a lot of love, a lot of fun. I had 6 brothers. And it was just 2 sisters mainly growing up. And so there was always activity around our home. Education was a big part of it, doing well in school. I think most of my siblings and I, we probably got perfect attendance for 12 years in high school. But we were in the country and there was nothing else to do. So really school and church was kind of our social lives, around those things. And so in a 2-parent family, my father was a deacon in the church, and really at the time that we were growing up had really become very, very committed to church and his career. He was a builder, he was a carpenter, and refinished furniture. So my mom was a housemaker. Most of her lives was a homemaker and did not work outside of the home until my father had a heart attack. I think I was in 8th grade. And so she was kind of forced to go to work, but most of my life she was a homemaker. Always noisy, always active, but we had structure though because we had responsibilities. I was the oldest girl, and my mom loved to cook. And so cooking for a big family, she really didn't let us do a lot of cooking, my sister and I. But we could do things like we could watch the bread in the oven or watch the cake or watch this, the pot come to a boil and turn it down. But as far as preparing meals, we did not do any of that, which was a deficit later in life. But she was a homemaker, and so my responsibility was also helping to clean the house and helping to watch my younger siblings. Because I had 3 older brothers, my sister and I then had 3 younger brothers, and they were pretty rambunctious. But it was a lot of love in our home. I don't remember my siblings and I arguing a lot or anything like that. The boys were responsible for the outside, for the yards, and work with my dad on the cars or different things like that. But this is a lot of comfort. We had a lot of visitors in our home. Like I said, church was our social hub. And so because of my daddy's role, a lot of his uncles, I grew up with a lot of great uncles, who lived to be 90-something years old. And my mom was a cook, so they loved coming to our house to eat. So we got to be around them a lot and learn a lot from them, just in terms of, being respectful. But we got to hear a lot of their conversations about when they were growing up. And so we know a lot about our family history as a result of that, which I think was very significant now as we look at family reunions, and we're getting ready to have one in July. But, we go back probably about 6 generations of knowing who our ancestors are and everybody up to this present day. I think it was probably the summers when there were church revivals, and we would go from church to church in our little community. So there were about 7 churches. And so for that season of the summer, each Sunday you had revivals, and we would go there, and they were called big meetings back then, and people had food in the church. They had food outside in the trunks of their cars, and at a time to see my friends from other parts of the county. And so that was always very, very memorable. It was a week long. And so from Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and then, Monday through Thursday, I think it ended on Thursday, we went to church. So that was kind of our social activity, but we got to stay in touch with a lot of our friends because of that, and just know people just in different parts of the area. Probably the first one was probably the death of my grandmother when I was 13. she lived next door to us. Apparently, my parents lived with her when I was born. Then they moved out, and then when they moved again, she moved next door. They brought her next door. She was a widower young, and so she had two of my uncles who lived with her. But I was just very, very close to her. When I finished my chores, I would go to her house and help her out, and just being around her. A lot of my cousins and siblings thought she was mean, but I just tell them she was never mean to me because I was nice to her. But when she died, that was probably one of the first deaths that I can remember of somebody close to me. And I remember I wrote a poem for her. I used to always like to write. So that was my first poem, and she always encouraged me. And they actually published it on the back of her obituary. So it's probably one of the most painful things I could think about. It was very different. One of the things I do remember, I want to say this going back to my childhood, is I was teased a lot. I was teased because of my eyes. You know, when people would get, my friends or even my sister would get mad at me, she would say, "You make me sick with your old gray eyes." And so I really felt very different, and I felt like it was a bad thing. And so when I went to college, it was my first time getting away from the cocoon, as we call it, with my multiple aunts and uncles and 40 cousins. And so I was really going off on my own, I thought, because my two best friends went to Winthrop, and I chose Benedict because it was in my family for about 3 generations by then. So, but on the first day, my 2 cousins were here visiting from Ohio and Maryland, and because our fathers were so close, they decided they want their kids to go to school too, so they enrolled with me. So that made it much, much better, because I was kind of dreading it. I didn't really know anybody else from my school that was going, but that made it a lot of fun. It made it very comfortable for me again. It was like I was back in the cocoon because I had family that was there. I did. The summer between high school and going to college, my oldest brother got married. He married his high school sweetheart. She says they were together in 5th grade. In some iterations, she said 8th grade. But either way, and they both went to Benedict. And so a lot of the people from Benedict were there. And 3 of his friends came. And so I met the guys. And of course, my 2 best friends and I, we thought we were kind of grown. We got to go out that night with them. And we just, enamored with, these older guys. So we went to, when I went to college, he was there. And I worked in the library, and I remember him coming in the library asking if I remembered him, and I really didn't. But then he reminded me, where we had met, and we started dating probably the end of my freshman year. I thought he was very kind. He had a very nice demeanor about himself. He could sing, and he was older. He was an Omega in fraternity with my brother, and I felt like if he was a friend of my brother's, he was safe probably, and but very much a genteel kind of guy. I did. So when I finished college, we were dating pretty seriously, and kind of had another offer my senior year of somebody that I dated in high school to move to California. And I decided that I would stay. And we actually lived together for a while, and I thought my parents would kill me. So I better be, we better be trying to make a decision to get married. So he went to ask my dad about marrying me, and my dad said no, he wasn't ready for me to get married. I was disappointed, but I love my dad so much, and I just, I was going to honor him. And so we, went back, and we were both working at the time. And then the next year I moved back to Columbia and decided that we would we said we're going to go and get married, and we didn't go back to my dad that time. And we got married and began our life together in Columbia. And so he was singing, and I was, partying with my friends and those kinds of things. And but somewhere in there I started getting more serious about getting back in church, because I'd been baptized when I was 8 years old. And I really knew then that I didn't know it was a call, but I knew about being predestined. I asked my dad, I said, does predestination really means that God knows everything that you're going to do? He said, yeah. And so I went to join the church with the oldest man, the bootlegger in the church, and joined the same night I joined. But anyway, so very memorable time. And I remember being very serious about that and thinking that I wanted to be a missionary or a nun when I grew up. Yes, we did. We did. And all around me, everybody else was having children. My sister was 2 years younger than me. My two best friends from first and second grade, they were on their third child. My good friends, Pastor Sandy and Eddie Jones, they were on their third child, and she's an actual relative, first cousin to my husband. So, and then my sister Gloria, who was 2 years younger than me, who got, graduated from high school 2 years younger, got finished college, got married 2 years younger, but she was on her second child. And it kind of struck me that I'd never been pregnant before. And so maybe I wanted to just kind of, but I could say that by the time they were having their third pregnancy, I was aware, and I was very sad about that. It was very hurtful to me, and I didn't know why. There was some shame with it too, because people were always saying, y'all don't have any children yet, or y'all not gonna have any children. And so I was dealing with that kind of that stigma of not having children. So with that being said, I did go to my OBGYN and began to talk to him about it. And he decided he'd start me on some treatments for infertility. He basically said that, this is a condition, and there are a couple of things that could be a reason for it, but let's find out why. So at that point, I went through a series of exploratory surgeries. I did infertility surgeries. I took infertility pills. All these things I'd heard about, but my mom had 9 children. So I thought with 11 with a set of twins that died. So I thought this can't be happening to me. I was in the 5th grade, and they asked what I wanted to be. I said, I want to be a mother with 5 children. So I never saw my life being this way. And so reflecting back on all of that, I realized that I was just dealing with some depression, during that time, a lot of shame. And because then people knew I couldn't have children. And I felt like there was some stigma, some curse to that somehow. But in the process of time, we exhausted all of our efforts, everything that the doctors could do. And he was an East Indian doctor, Dr. Mustafa. And he said to me, we've done everything I could do. He said, it's up to the man upstairs at that point. So at that point I had gotten, recommitted my life to the Lord and was a Christian, and was at a church that there was very much a faith-believing church. And I had started that process, that walk, and praying and just beginning to seek God to see, what did God say about it? Because that's what I'd learned to do. Find your situation in the Bible and then go with that pattern. And that's what I started to do. And that began my journey of recognizing that I was infertile and looking at people said, you can do in vitro, the insurance will be paying for it. And I remember my mother-in-law saying, well, you can adopt, and I said, no, Mom Duran, I'm going to have my own child. And so I began on this faith journey that was very deep rooted in watching what I say, being mindful that, our words have power. And so that began my journey. So I began to find scriptures that said, no weapon formed will prosper, for instance, in Isaiah chapter 54. I forgot the verse. But that meant the weapon in my body was that I was infertile. And that, I found out later that I only had one ovary. And I didn't know that somehow that had been overlooked, because when I was at college, I did have surgery and they removed one of my ovaries, but my parents never told me that. It wasn't until much, much later. And then the scripture now that I know that made a difference for me, that I found the verse that says that he will make the barren woman to keep house and be a joyful mother of children. And that resonated with me in such a deep way, because I didn't have any joy. I was just constantly thinking about it and overthinking it. And so I began to every day read those scriptures and make those confessions. And then there was a lady that I worked with, and when I changed careers, she called me one day. And we talked about my infertility when we worked together, but she called me one day and said to me, Leslie, the Lord says that you're going to have a baby before you get out of graduate school, because I quit work to go back to graduate school. And I just laughed and smiled, because I knew that was not coincidental. I knew that was something divine. And I'd learned also that when you get that kind of rhema word from God, that, you could expect it to happen. And so she said a couple other things to me, like, she called me back. And so we rejoiced over that. I said, oh, wonderful. Yeah. I said, I believe it. She prayed with me. And then another time she called me, she says, do you have any maternity clothes? I said, no. Why would I have maternity clothes? She said, sometimes you have to take a step of faith. When you believe in God for something, you have to do something to activate your faith to show that you believe it. I said, well, what would I do? She said, well, go get some maternity clothes. And I'm thinking in my head, none of this makes sense. But guess what? I'm all in now. So I went to a little shop they had in 5 Points and bought a little pink comb and put Abigail, put a name on it, and a little blue comb, put Nathan, put a name on it, and I bought a maternity dress. They had a little jean shift that, you just like we wear now, but it was in the maternity shop. So I got it, and I didn't even tell my husband at that time what was going on. We were having some issues in our marriage and everything, so I just didn't discuss it with him. I just, activated, what I believe God for. And I put it in a little chest in the room and just left it there. I didn't tell anybody, as a matter of fact, about this part of the journey that I was doing. And I think the last thing that happened, she called me, she says, well, do you know when you want to have the baby? I said, what do you mean when I want to have the baby? She said, well, it takes 9 months, so you need to have this period of time that you're thinking about. So I forgot whenever it was, but I said, well, I'm back in for the semester. I got 2 semesters. We'll be out for the summer. It'd be good if I could have it like in the summer, maybe like July 30th or something, because then I could be, ready to go back to school by the time it started. So the other thing that happened, just so many divine things that happened during this time of my faith walk, is that I was in church. My aunt had come from Ohio and was staying the night with me. And I said, let's go to church the night, Sunday night. And the pastor came down, and, the lady who was very gifted in words of wisdom, words of knowledge. And she just looked at me and said, Leslie, the Lord said that you wanted is already here. That's all she said. And she said, you know what I'm talking about? I said, yes, I do. And I told my aunt, I said, when you get back to Ohio, I'm going to have something to tell you. So I called the doctor the next day, got in for an appointment the following day, because I'd had some symptoms, tender breasts and some things like that. And so when I went in, and he said, so you think you want a pregnancy test? I said, I do. And he came back in the room and said, well, guess what? You're pregnant. He said, you must have been doing a lot of praying. I said, I absolutely have been. And when he left out, I just had my own private little ceremony of rejoicing. And that was the story of that. And so I know that faith that works, and that our faith in God is more powerful than we even know. And just having had those experiences, and the way that they lined up was just so incredibly powerful to me. And it has given me just a level of faith and hope in other situations in my life that have occurred, where I go to God and say, God, what are you saying to me? What are you trying to say to me? What is it that I need to know, in this situation? And we have to understand that, we're so much more connected and aligned with him. He created us, and we have his DNA. And so for me, that is what I want to encourage women to understand, that, the ability to have faith and believe against all odds to bring the things that seem impossible, to manifest in your life is something that I've lived in several instances. And not only did he give me that child, indescribable. My labor was bad for one thing, so I was glad to see him. But everything that I had been praying for and hoping for all of that time, just seeing it come to pass, because it was just, like you said, the 9 months of pregnancy. So it's all about getting to delivery day, and just the joy. I named him Jonathan, which means gift of God, because that's truly what he was. And I got to hold him and feel the reality of everything that I've been praying for years. I did. And so, I don't know, God has always worked with me in dreams, really since I was a little girl, and different things, visions. And so one night I dreamt that I had this little boy, and I thought about having another baby. His dad and I had separated by then and divorced. And Jonathan always said, yeah, I guess like with all only children, is I want a little sister and brother, kind of thing. And I thought about it, I thought I can't afford it. I'm a single mom with you, to do the things I want to do with you. So I had this dream, and in this dream, I had this little boy. And I was like, that was odd. And I went to work and I told my secretary, I said, man, I was dreaming last night. I had this little boy in the dream. And I said, and I think I know who it is, but I said, it was weird. I said, but girl, I can't afford another child, and we talked. And sure enough, I think within a week, I got a call from a lady who said, I need you to help me, and I need you to come to the hospital and see me. And so I did. And I went in and saw this little boy that I just fell in love with immediately, just a hairy little child. And she asked me if I would take care of him. He was 2 days old. And because I couldn't make a decision on the spot, I said, I need some time. But the dream came back. And so I knew that by the time, and 2 weeks later, that I would make that decision to say yes and receive him into my home. And he's 27 years old today. His name is Ty. So I have Ty and Jonathan, because the scripture says he'll make the barren woman to keep house and be a more joyful mother of children. And I realized it's being a mother of children that brings the joy. And a lot of times we were locked, like I was locked into having my own biological child. But then once I got the gift of Ty, I realized I couldn't love them anymore. I'm a joyful mother of Ty in the same way. And so I want to encourage women that, adoption is a reality, whether it's a family adoption or it's another legal adoption, it's a reality for a lot of people. And had the blessing of praying for a lot of women who've born their own children, and some of them have chosen to adopt, and they couldn't be happier. I know for sure that God speaks to us. And I know for sure that we have to have an ear to hear. We have to pay attention to what he is saying. We have to know his voice, because it's going to always line up with his word, first of all. And then when we get that, we cannot deter from our belief and our faith, because that is really what moves the hand of God. It really is faith. And he helped me to develop a saying that says, faith is knowing that God will do what needs to be done. But trust is letting him do it, not getting in his way, not interfering with the process, being able to wait and see the manifestation of your vision and of your dreams. So I know for sure that God will talk. He will answer when we call, when we ask. I know this sounds cliche, but I say God has not forgotten you. He knows each of us in our innermost being. And sometimes we think this is what we want and it's going to satisfy us, but God really knows that thing that's really going to satisfy you. And so you may not know that there's a niece or nephew that needs you. Go and sow into that and take care of that and get fulfillment out of that until your season comes. Don't stand by the wayside. Through my greatest pains, I've learned that I'm pretty resilient, and I have a new word. It's called bounce back ability. And I like to say bounce back ability, real fast to make it sound. But that when we understand life cycles, and we understand that things are going to happen in life, but it's how we respond to those things. At some of the most hurtful times in my life, I was lost. I didn't know how I was going to recover from the pain and the trauma and the shame. But I always have been an optimist. And one day I said, you know what? I'm going to decide to be happy. And then I'll decide if you could be a part of it. Because we look to other people to make us happy. And happiness and joy comes from the inside. And so that's what I share with people. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's not the other person, it's you. And that's what I realized. Even though the things that happened to me, I, for a long time, blamed what happened to me instead of understanding it happened for me so that I could grow, so that I could realize I could stand on my own, that I'm stronger than I thought that I was, that I have more of my mom's resilience than I ever thought, because she was a tough cookie, and that with God, all things really are possible. And He is really the answer to every problem for me. So I love this story because it happened to me. I love this story. I really had gone through a stage, of being divorced again, and I was just having a good time. Really, I was enjoying that stage of my life. But I've always wanted to have a good marriage. I wasn't happy that I hadn't had one, but at the same time, I was looking, but I wasn't looking. And so one night I'd been over, Jonathan, I think they'd had their second daughter, and I was over there, and I was just so grateful that, first of all, that I was getting to enjoy a granddaughter when I never thought I would have children. And then, when I got home, and they were like, well, why don't you spend the night? I said, no, I'm gonna go home. It's just, over in West Columbia there in Emerald. I said, I'm gonna go home. But when I walked in the house, this feeling of loneliness came over me. I didn't know at the time what it was. Did my pattern, got something out of the refrigerator, sat on the couch. But when I sat on the couch, it felt like I sunk. Felt like the air just went out of me, and I was like, what is wrong with me? And I just felt a sadness to come over me, and I got up and I said, Lord, what is wrong with me? And I realized I was lonely. I had a big family, never really lived alone. And I said, God, you know what? If you want me to be by myself, I'm okay with that, because if you want it for me, I know it's going to be all right. But, I really don't know what I want, but I know I want what you want for me. And I went back and sat down and enjoyed a TV show and forgot about it. And about 2 weeks later, one of the clients I was working with, I was on the way to her house on a Sunday. She said, I want you to meet somebody. You on the way? I said, yeah. I said, I got Marlon with me. She said, that's okay. She said, I want you to meet somebody. I said, who you want me to meet? She said, my brother. I said, I didn't know you had a brother. She said, yeah, I want you to meet him. I said, okay. I'm saying to myself, okay, here I go. But I get over there, and he's sitting at the table doing some reading. He had some surgery, and he was there recuperating for a couple of days. And so we exchanged small talk. I don't even remember, he had on a mask. I don't remember what he looked like. I remember he had a Bible in front of him, and I think she told me he was a minister. Took care of business with her. Marlon and I left and went home. So about 2 hours after I got home, she called me and said, my brother said that he'd like to have your phone number. He wanted me to give you his phone number. I said, no, I don't need his phone number. I said, he could have my number if he wants to call me. He's welcome to call me. And so he did. It was November 1st, 2020. We've talked every day since then. And what I found was that because I wasn't sure what I wanted, God knew me. He knew me. We had so many things in common. He reminded me of my brothers, who I love dearly. A lot of fun. But the main thing we had in common was God and our children. And so he asked me to marry him about 90 days. I was talking to my coach, and she thought that I was sounded a little different about this one. And so in the process of time, he asked me to marry him. And I think we've known each other probably right about 2 months. And I said, no, he says, I want to marry you. I said, you don't want to marry me. You don't know me, like that. I said, we don't know each other like that. He says, I know everything I need to know about you. I know I want to marry you. I said, you hadn't even asked me to marry you like that, because we kidded around all that. That was a good thing. I was just myself with him. I never had that sense of just being me all the time anyway, because we were friends. So he got down on his knees and proposed to me. And I'm sitting myself in my head, I'm thinking, I know this is not happening. This man is on his knees proposing to me. This cannot. And I'm thinking, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I'm like, so then a thought came to say, what if you say no and he walks out of your life? And I was like, I don't want him to walk out of my life. And I said, okay, yeah. He said, what you said? I didn't hear you. I said, yeah. He said, well, say it like you mean. I said, yes. And the rest is history. We decided that we'd get married for Valentine's on February 13th because that was something I discussed with somebody. And I said, I want to meet your children. You met my children. I cannot marry you without meeting your children. I didn't want to start that way. And actually, Angela, you've been a good example about blended families, and I knew that would be important. So off to Jersey we went, and we came back and had a little small private ceremony, and going on 3 years. And it's been a very good situation for us. Some foundational things we came up with about trust, commitment, respect, and honor. And we live by that and developing our own codes, but agreeing to disagree, but disagreeing without being disagreeable, and some basic things that I didn't do before. But I'm another me too. I realize I have responsibility, and what I put in is what I would get out most times, and understanding the husband's role better, because, I came from a strong matriarchal line, and so, I had a lot of that, but understanding that, it's okay to, and then to, at this age and stage, let somebody take care of you. Let them make the decisions. You don't have to be in every, picking party. And so just some things that I've learned. I do also try to encourage women to come to that understanding and not just say, well, I'm all right by myself. No, you're not. We weren't really made to be alone. We weren't, and so that's kind of where we are. So they call us, my pastor calls us J&J Ministries, because we have that story between the two of us. Yeah. I was in a training class. I know this pretty easily. I was in a training class for leadership at work, and we had to create a mission statement for ourselves. And I just thought about over my life, who I've been consistently is that I have loved people. It's just very easy for me to love. I'd say I was created to love. And so inspirational things are important to me. I've always liked the love stories, the stories with the happy endings. I've loved, joy in the lives of others. And so I created my mission statement that it is to inspire the hearts of people, because everything starts in our hearts. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, Where your heart is, there your treasures are, So the heart is a big part of our spirit man, because we're body, mind, and spirit. And so it's to inspire the hearts of people to live and love and serve to the goodwill of all humanity. Because we know God wants us to enjoy life. And so living joyfully helps us to spread joy. And then, it can just kind of multiply in every area of our lives. I would want to say that know yourself and to thy own self be true. For me, that would mean knowing God early, as I did, and staying true to that, because I think there were some pitfalls and some places in my life that I forgot that. I forgot who I was. I forgot I was a little girl who loved to learn and loved people and loved inspirational things, and kind of got lost at a point. So just being true to who you are, knowing yourself, your likes and dislikes, and you don't have to please anybody. Be happy with yourself. And if you're happy with yourself, then that's what's going to emulate from you, to not become somebody else just to please somebody else. If I listened to what my heart has been trying to tell me, I would do more community outreach around women who were single or divorced, rearing their children with values and being there for their children, not neglecting their children for anything. I feel like that's what my mom gave us, was stability. My parents did. And understanding today, don't walk away from the responsibility of being a mother, because I think that we really are the salt of the earth. What I know for sure is that God loves me so very, very much. And I'm not trying to sound religious about that, because I understand that He's a spirit, but that my connection to Him is the air I breathe. It's in the air that I breathe. And the more I stay connected with Him, I'm going to stay pretty much on course. But when I lose sight of that, it's when I lose sight of what I need to be doing, I'm supposed to be doing, and what He destined me to be.